Hello and welcome back to Lewis the Woodworker. This will be the final part of the new workshop. I actually somehow managed to delete most of the footage that I had when making the windows, but here I am just adding an internal bead where the window will sit flat against. So I'm just gluing that on and nailing it with some pins and a hammer. I also had a combination square set to a certain depth to make sure that I had the same width all along the window. Once I had the windows in place, I would then put a second bead from the inside and then again just hammering it with nails this time. I didn't put any glue on this bead since it will make it easier to remove if needed in the future. Next, moving on to the door. I used my router to groove out a groove where the hinges would sit flush against the door. I then did some chisel work in the round corners where the router bit wouldn't be able to get into. I then screwed it in place with some normal screws that came with a hinge. Onto the lock, I used a big mortise lock that had to go inside the door, therefore I had to make lots of small holes and then chisel out the hole. I used a 15mm Forstner bit to drill out lots of small holes that I could then chisel out. And a quick tip is to use tape on your drill bit to mark the depth that you have to drill to. And then I just drilled as many holes as I had to. Once I had the holes all drilled out, I would use a chisel to square off the corners and remove any material that was left. I then drilled into the front of the door for the handle and the Euro lock. Again, I used the chisel to remove any material left from the Forstner bit. I screwed the mortise lock into the door and then I fitted the Euro lock. I used a large special handle in combination with this big mortise lock and then inserted the Euro lock. I then put a screw from the front of the plate into the Euro lock to keep it in place. Last but not least was the front of the door handle, and then that's done. So now I had a all sealed up, weathertight building. Moving on to the interior, I used rock wool insulation to fill all the walls, instead of PIR insulation like I did for the base. As you can see, it was very easy to cut this with just a handsaw. I used rock wool instead of PIR because it's much easier to cut, very easy to work with, and flexible. It's also much more cheaper than PIR insulation. I used 70mm slabs because my studs are 75mm thick, and that would just leave enough room so that they weren't protruding through the studs. Rockwool call this their flexi slab insulation. Make sure to wear long clothes, a mask, some goggles and gloves when handling this stuff, as it really irritates your skin and can get really annoying at the end of the day. Onto the cladding, I would just cut it down to size with my track saw and then fit it onto the wall. For any outlets that were around the workshop, I would use a pencil and a combination square to mark it out and then cut into it with a drill bit and then cut around the hole with a jigsaw. The electrics were fitted in by an electrician that I know, and overall I've got 10 sockets and 3 LED bars in the inside and 2 LED lights on the outside. I then just hoped that I measured everything correctly. Any imperfections where the OSB met the floor didn't really matter to me, as I would be covering them with skirting anyways. I used 11mm OSB for the whole of the workshop, apart from the floor. I then screwed it into place with 4x60mm screws. I highly recommend spending your money and buying the Torx head screws, as the usual star head or posi drive screws are quite annoying sometimes. Luckily, I managed to get quite a nice snug fit everywhere, including around the windows, which meant less hole filling later on. I didn't film much of it, but here's a few pictures. After I covered everything in OSB and fitted the skirting, I resanded the floor because it was the same OSB top that I put on the start of the build, and it was all getting old and disgusting from the weather. This step took about 7 hours over the course of a few days, and I really highly recommend investing in a good sander like this one from Mirka, but I didn't have the money at the time, so I borrowed this from a neighbour. You can really see the changing colour from the old OSB to the newly sanded OSB. It's really much nicer than what I used to have. Here's a bit where you can really tell the difference. I then gave the inside walls and ceiling 2 coats of white primer paint, and that was it really. I gave 1 coat of Osmo to the newly sanded floor, and it just protected it from any work environment that I'll have in the future. I really hope these series of videos helped you, or you just really enjoyed watching them. So make sure to drop down the likes, comments, and don't forget to subscribe for more coming videos in the future. Thank you so much for watching, and I hope to see you soon.